I told my brother I appreciated the $750 he contributed to Mom's medical bills. He dropped the box he was carrying, turned around slowly, and said, "I sent $45,000. That should have covered everything." The cardboard box hit the driveway with a hollow thud that I can still hear in my sleep. Jordan's face went from confused to horrified in the span of a heartbeat, and I watched my own reflection do the same in his prescription sunglasses. Behind us, Mom's house stood quiet in the September afternoon sun, the same house where we'd grown up, where she'd raised 4 kids on a teacher's salary, where the medical bills had been piling up on the kitchen counter for 8 months, like some kind of cruel monument to cancer's indifference to family budgets. The number he'd just said hung in the air between us like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet, and my brain was doing that thing where it processes information too slowly, like buffering on a bad internet connection. $45,000. I'd been managing Mom's care coordination since her diagnosis, and I'd seen exactly $750 come through from Jordan's account. $750 that I'd thanked him for 3 times because he'd been traveling for work, because he had his own family, because I understood that not everyone could contribute equally. $45,000. The math wasn't mathing, as my daughter would say, and the look on Jordan's face told me he was doing the same calculation, arriving at the same impossible deficit, and realizing that one of us was about to have our reality completely destroyed. "What do you mean, 45,000?" I heard myself ask, and my voice sounded hollow, distant, like I was listening to a recording of myself from underwater. Jordan's box of Mom's old photo albums lay forgotten at his feet, and neither of us moved to pick it up. I'd been managing Mom's medical expenses for 8 months when Jordan said those words, ever since the morning she'd called me from the oncologist's office, with her voice doing that thing where she was trying not to cry and failing. Stage 3 ovarian cancer, they'd said, and I'd dropped everything to become the point person, because that's what the oldest does, right? That's what I'd always done. Coordinate the doctors, manage the insurance claims, set up the GoFundMe, track the bills, communicate with the family, make sure someone was always at her appointments. Mom had been a 3rd-grade teacher for 33 years at Riverside Elementary, and her insurance was decent, but not decent enough for the kind of war she was fighting. The chemotherapy alone was running $32,000 every cycle, and her policy had a maximum out-of-pocket that might as well have been the national debt. My wife Rachel and I had contributed what we could from our savings, about $12,000 over the months, and we'd been scraping by, cutting everywhere we could think to cut. I'd taken on extra freelance graphic design work, the kind of soul-crushing corporate logo redesigns I'd sworn I'd never do again. Rachel had picked up weekend shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. We have 2 kids, Olivia, who's 14, and Marcus, who's 11, and they'd both stopped asking for anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I'd set up a shared family email account where everyone could track Mom's progress, share medical updates, coordinate who was driving her to appointments, who was bringing meals, who was staying overnight when the pain got bad. My younger brother Jordan lived in Seattle, worked in tech, made good money from what I understood. My sister Vanessa was a paralegal in Denver, divorced, 2 kids of her own, doing what she could. The youngest, Kyle, was finishing medical school in Boston, drowning in student loans but sending what he could when he could. We'd all rallied, or at least I thought we had, pulling together to keep Mom afloat while the medical industrial complex tried to bill her into oblivion. Jordan had transferred $750 to my account in March, about 2 months into Mom's treatment, and I'd been genuinely grateful because I knew he was busy, knew he had a mortgage in one of the most expensive cities in America, knew his wife Stephanie had just gone back to school for her MBA. I'd texted him immediately. "Got it. Thank you so much. This helps more than you know." He'd responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji, and I'd thought nothing of it. In April, nothing came through, and I didn't push because who was I to demand money from my siblings? We were all adults, all struggling with our own lives, our own financial pressures. In May, Vanessa had sent $2,000 with an apologetic note about how it was everything she could spare after her ex had missed another child support payment. Kyle had sent $500 with a longer apology about his loan payments and his clinical rotations not leaving time for extra work. I'd sent updates to the family email every week, detailed breakdowns of where we stood, what was covered, what wasn't, what was coming due. In June, I'd sent a specific email with the subject line, "Mom's Treatment Fund, Current Status," that laid everything out in a spreadsheet. Total medical costs to date, $163,000. Insurance covered, $98,000. Out-of-pocket required, $65,000. Funds received from family, $37,500. Shortfall, $27,500. GoFundMe, total, $18,200. Remaining gap, $9,300. The email had included a breakdown by contributor, and next to Jordan's name, I'd listed $750. I'd sent that email to the family address, the one we all used, the one that went to everyone's personal accounts. Jordan had responded 6 hours later with, "Thanks for keeping us updated. Sending more next week." Next week never came, or at least I thought it never came, and by the time we were standing in that driveway in September, I'd written it off as one of those well-intentioned promises that falls through the cracks of busy lives and good intentions gone sideways. "I sent it to Mom directly," Jordan said, and his voice had taken on this careful, measured quality, Like he was trying very hard not to sound accusatory, but also like he was trying very hard not to explode. $45,000. Wire transfer. March 15th. I sent you the receipt in an email. His hands were moving now. That thing people do when they're trying to physically manifest proof out of thin air. And he was pulling out his phone with movements that were just a little too sharp, a little too fast. My stomach was already dropping. That elevator cable snapping sensation that starts in your chest and radiates outward until your fingers are tingling. March 15th was 3 days after Mom's second chemotherapy cycle. 2 days before the hospital had called me about the outstanding balance on her account. The same day I'd been frantically trying to figure out how to cover a $16,000 shortfall before they suspended her treatment. I never got an email about any wire transfer, I said, and I was pulling out my own phone now, opening my email, searching for anything from Jordan in March. There was the text message about the $750. There was his thumbs up. There was nothing else. I sent it to the family email, Jordan said, and now he was scrolling through his phone, his thumbs moving fast across the screen. March 15th, 2:34 p.m., subject line, wire transfer confirmation, Mom's medical fund, with the receipt attached as a PDF. I was searching the family email now, the one I checked religiously, the one that was supposed to be our central hub for everything mom-related. Nothing. No email from Jordan on March 15th. Nothing with that subject line. Nothing with a wire transfer receipt. Jordan, I'm looking at the account right now. There's nothing here. His face was doing something complicated, something between confusion and anger and dawning horror, and he was turning his phone around to show me the screen. There it was, sent from his email address to the family account address. March 15th, 2:34 p.m. Subject, wire transfer confirmation, Mom's medical fund. The email was simple, almost businesslike. Hey everyone, just completed a wire transfer to Mom's account for $45,000 to help cover her medical expenses. Receipt attached. This should handle most of what's outstanding. Let me know if you need anything else. Jordan. Below that was a PDF icon with the file name wire_31524_45000.pdf. I stared at the screen, then at my phone, then back at his screen. This didn't come through, I said, and my voice sounded strange, detached. Check your sent folder, Jordan said, and there was an edge creeping into his voice now, something sharp and frightened. I'm looking at the sent folder. It's right here. I sent it. I was already opening my laptop from the front seat of my car, connecting to my phone's hotspot, pulling up the family email account in Gmail, going through every folder, every label, every possible place an email could hide. Inbox, sent, drafts, spam, trash, everything. Nothing. No email from Jordan on March 15th. No email with that subject line. No PDF receipt. Someone deleted it, Jordan said quietly, and the way he said it made my blood run cold because he wasn't speculating. He was stating a fact, and we both knew what that fact meant. Someone with access to the family email account had received Jordan's email, had seen the wire transfer receipt for $45,000, and had deleted it before anyone else could see it. Someone had made sure I thought Jordan had only sent $750. Someone had made sure the family thought Jordan had barely contributed. Someone who had access to Mom's bank account, who could receive a $45,000 wire transfer, who could make it disappear while the rest of us scrambled to cover bills that should have already been paid. The list of people with access to the family email account was short and getting shorter by the second as implications crystallized in my mind like frost spreading across glass. Me, obviously. Jordan. Vanessa. Kyle. And Mom, though she'd stopped checking it regularly after the second round of chemo when the brain fog had gotten bad and I'd essentially taken over all her digital correspondence. The password was Riverside 2024 because Mom had set it up and she'd used the name of her school and the year, and we'd all agreed to keep it simple so everyone could access it when needed. But the email deletion was only part of the equation, and as Jordan and I stood there in the driveway, the bigger, darker question was spreading between us like spilled ink. If Jordan had wired $45,000 to Mom's account, where had it gone? I'd been managing Mom's bills directly from her checking account, the one she'd added me as a joint holder on back in March, when her hands had started shaking too much to write checks reliably. I'd been watching every transaction like a hawk, reconciling everything against the medical bills, making sure every dollar was accounted for. There had been no mysterious $45,000 deposit in March. There had been no unexplained windfall. There had been me, scraping together payments, juggling due dates, calling billing departments to negotiate payment plans, watching the account balance hover dangerously close to zero month after month. Pull up your bank records, Jordan said, and he was using his tech guy voice now, the one that was all systems and logic and troubleshooting. Show me the wire transfer receipt. He was already texting as he spoke, and I could see the message preview. Stephanie, need you to log into our Chase account and forward me the wire transfer confirmation from March 15th. Within 90 seconds, his phone chimed, and he was opening an email, downloading a PDF, and then turning the screen toward me again. The wire transfer receipt was official, detailed, the kind of document that doesn't lie because banks don't play games with $45,000 transactions. Sender, Jordan Michael Thornton. Sender account, Chase checking ending in 7392. Recipient, Dorothy Ann Thornton. Recipient account, First National Bank, account ending in 8156. Amount, $45,000 exactly. Date, March 15th, 2024. Time, 11:47 a.m. Pacific. Reference number WT-20204-03-15-08-47392. Status, completed. I felt my hands start shaking as I pulled up Mom's First National Bank account on my phone, the one I'd been managing for 8 months, the one I thought I knew inside and out. Account number ending in 8156. That was right. That was Mom's account. Check the transactions for March 15th, Jordan said, and he was leaning over my shoulder now, both of us crowded around my phone screen like we were watching a horror movie and couldn't look away. I filtered the transaction history for March, scrolling down to the 15th. There was a deposit that day. My heart jumped. But it wasn't $45,000. It was $750. Deposit type, external transfer. Source, Chase Bank. Time, 2:23 p.m. Eastern. I felt like I was going to throw up. That's not the same transaction, Jordan said, and his voice had gone very quiet, very controlled. That's a different transfer. Look at the timestamp. My wire went through at 11:47 a.m. Pacific, which is 2:47 p.m. Eastern. Your screen shows a deposit at 2:23 p.m. Eastern. That's 24 minutes earlier. I was scrolling frantically now, checking every transaction for March, checking the days before and after, checking for any deposit even close to $45,000. Nothing. The largest single deposit in March had been $8,000 from the GoFundMe account on March 22nd. Someone intercepted it, I said, and my voice didn't sound like my voice anymore. Someone changed the routing. Jordan was already dialing, his phone pressed to his ear, and I could hear the automated menu system for Chase Bank's wire transfer department. He was pressing numbers rapidly, navigating the menu tree with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, and within 90 seconds, he was speaking to a human. Yes, I need to verify a wire transfer from March 15th of this year. Reference number WT-2024-03-15-08473992. Yes, I'll hold. The silence that followed felt like it lasted hours, though my phone's clock said it was only 3 minutes. Jordan's face was doing that thing where he was trying to stay calm, but his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. Yes, I'm here, he said suddenly. And then he was rattling off verification information, his account number, his social security number, his mother's maiden name. I need to confirm the recipient account details for that transfer, the full account number and routing number. Another pause, and I watched his eyes move like he was reading something on an invisible screen, memorizing numbers. And that's definitely where the funds were sent? No errors, no corrections, no reversals? Okay. Can you email me a complete transaction record? Yes, this email address. Thank you. He hung up and immediately opened his notes app, typing rapidly. The wire went to First National Bank, routing number 0843022416, account number 815629473382, full account number. He looked up at me, and his eyes were doing something I'd never seen before, something that made me think of photographs of soldiers after combat. Mom's account number is 815629473381. One digit different, the last digit. Someone set up an account with a number 1 digit off from Mom's account and intercepted my wire transfer. The implications were spreading through my consciousness like poison, and I was already pulling up Mom's account again, looking at the account number at the top of the screen. 8156-2947-3381. Jordan's wire had gone to 8156-2947-3382. Who has the authority to open a bank account in Mom's name? Jordan asked, but we both already knew the answer. Joint account holders, power of attorney, family members with access to her personal information. I was a joint holder on Mom's checking account, added in March when she'd needed help managing bills. Vanessa had financial power of attorney, something Mom had set up years ago when Vanessa had started working as a paralegal and had helped Mom update her estate planning. Kyle was listed as a secondary emergency contact on Mom's accounts. Jordan had nothing. He'd moved away too early, established his own life too completely. The circle was getting smaller, the possibilities narrowing like a spotlight focusing down to a single point, and I didn't want to think about what that point was illuminating. We need to call the bank, I said, and I was already dialing First National's customer service line, but Jordan grabbed my wrist. Don't, he said. Not yet. Think about it. If someone set up a fraudulent account to intercept that transfer, calling the bank right now is going to alert them. They'll have time to move the money, delete records, cover their tracks. We need to document everything first, screenshot everything, download every statement, save every email, then we go to the police. The police. The word hung between us like a guillotine blade, and I realized that we weren't just talking about a missing wire transfer anymore. We were talking about bank fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, criminal prosecution. We were talking about someone in our family stealing $45,000 that was meant to keep our mother alive while she fought cancer. Who else knew you were sending money? I asked, and Jordan's face went carefully blank. Everyone. I mentioned it in the family group text the day before. Said I was sending a big contribution to help Mom, asked if anyone needed me to coordinate with them. I pulled up the family group text, scrolled back to March 14th. There it was. Hey family, planning to send a substantial wire transfer tomorrow to help with mom's medical expenses. Should cover most of what's outstanding. We'll send confirmation to the family email once it's processed. Responses had come in throughout the day. Vanessa. That's amazing, Jordan. Thank you so much. Kyle. You're a lifesaver, bro. And from my own number. This is such a relief, thank you. We'll make sure it gets properly allocated to the bills. Except I'd never allocated it to the bills because I'd never received it. And I'd spent 8 months thinking my brother had sent $750 instead of $45,000. We should check mom's mail, I said, thinking out loud now, my brain shifting into investigation mode because the alternative was sitting down on the driveway and screaming. Bank statements. If someone opened an account in her name, there should be statements coming to the house. Jordan nodded, and we were moving now, leaving the dropped box of photos forgotten on the concrete, walking toward mom's front door. I had keys. I'd had keys since March when I'd essentially moved into the spare bedroom to be closer for the worst nights. The house smelled like the lavender air freshener Mom always used, mixed with the antiseptic smell of medical supplies and the faint chemical tang that had started clinging to everything after the chemo began. The kitchen was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Coffee mug in the sink, Mom's pill organizer on the counter, the folder of medical bills and insurance statements in their usual spot next to the bread box. Mom was at her book club meeting, one of the few normal activities she'd insisted on maintaining even through treatment, meeting every other Wednesday with the same group of retired teachers she'd known for 30 years. She wouldn't be home for another 90 minutes. We had time. Jordan went straight for the mail basket on the hall table, the decorative wicker thing Mom had bought at a craft fair 20 years ago that had somehow become the permanent repository for every piece of mail that came through the door. He started sorting through envelopes with methodical precision, separating bills from advertisements from personal correspondence. I went to Mom's home office, the converted sunroom where she'd always graded papers and planned lessons, where file cabinets held 3 decades of careful record-keeping. The bank statements were in the second drawer, filed chronologically in manila folders labeled by year and month in Mom's precise teacher handwriting. I pulled March 2024 and opened it. First National Bank statement for Dorothy Ann Thornton, account ending in 3381. Standard format, listing deposits and withdrawals, and running balance. I scanned the deposit column for March 15th. $750 from external transfer. That was it. No $45,000. But tucked behind the official statement was another piece of paper, a printed email confirmation that Mom must have received and filed. I pulled it out, and my blood went cold. It was a welcome email from First National Bank. Dear Dorothy Thornton, thank you for opening your new business savings account with First National Bank. Your account number is 8156-2947-3382. You can access your account online at... The email was dated March 12th, 3 days before Jordan's wire transfer. The email had been sent to Mom's personal email address, the one she'd had for 20 years, the one all her banking notifications went to. Someone had opened a business savings account in Mom's name, with an account number 1 digit off from her regular checking account, 3 days before Jordan sent his wire transfer. Someone had planned this. Found something, Jordan called from the living room, and his voice had taken on that hollow quality again. I walked back to find him holding a stack of envelopes, all from First National Bank, all addressed to Dorothy Thornton at this address, all marked Business Savings Account Statement. He was opening them with shaking hands, and I watched as the monthly statements spilled out. March 2024. Opening deposit $45,000. Withdrawal of $15,000 on March 20th. Balance $30,000. April 2024. Withdrawal of $8,000 on April 3rd. Withdrawal of $12,000 on April 18th. Balance $10,000. May 2024. Withdrawal of $10,000 on May 2nd. Balance 0. Account closed May 15th, 2024. The $45,000 Jordan had sent to save our mother's life had been systematically drained over 2 months, and then the account had been closed, erased like it had never existed, while I'd been scrambling to cover bills and calling billing departments and cutting every corner in my own life to keep Mom's treatment on track. Someone stole it, Jordan said, and his voice was shaking now, actually shaking. Someone intercepted my transfer, opened a fake account, and spent $45,000 while Mom was dying. Not dying. I wanted to correct him automatically, fighting, but the correction died in my throat because we both knew how close it had been. How many times I'd sat in hospital waiting rooms wondering if we'd have to choose between rent and chemo. How many times I'd looked at my kids and wondered if we were going to lose our house trying to save my mother. Someone had let us go through that. Someone had watched us struggle and scrape and sacrifice while they'd been sitting on $45,000 that wasn't theirs. The withdrawals, I said, my brain clicking into that cold, analytical mode that happens when emotion gets too big to process. $15,000 in March, $8,000 in April, $12,000 in April, $10,000 in May. We need to figure out where that money went. Jordan was already photographing every statement with his phone, the camera shutter sound clicking rhythmically. We need to go to the police. Now. Before Mom gets home. Before anyone knows we know. I was nodding, my hands moving automatically to gather documents, to create a file of evidence. But part of my brain was stuck on a different problem: the family email, the deleted message. Someone had received Jordan's email, seen the wire transfer confirmation, and deleted it before anyone else could see it. Someone who had already set up the fraudulent account 3 days earlier, who was waiting for that transfer, who knew exactly how to intercept it. "Who has Mom's email password?" I asked, and Jordan looked up from his photographing. "Everyone who has the family email password," he said. "It's the same password. She uses the same password for everything. Riverside with the year." It was true. I'd helped Mom set up her email years ago, and she'd insisted on using the same password across accounts because she couldn't remember multiple passwords, and I'd never pushed back because she was my mother and she was a grown woman, and it had seemed harmless at the time. Harmless until someone used that password to intercept a wire transfer confirmation and delete it from the family email. Harmless until someone used her personal information to commit bank fraud. "We need to check her email," I said, pulling out my laptop again. If someone was monitoring her accounts, there might be other evidence. I logged into Mom's personal email. The password worked on the first try because of course it did, and started searching for anything related to First National Bank. The welcome email was there, received on March 12th. But there was also a trail of other emails I'd never seen before. Transaction confirmations, transfer notifications, bill payments. I opened the first one, dated March 20th. "Your transfer of $15,000 has been processed from your business savings account, 8156-2947-3382, to the following recipient, Vanessa L. Morrison, account ending in 7743. My sister's name. My sister's account. I felt the world tilt sideways, and I had to sit down on Mom's couch, the same couch where we'd played as kids, where Mom had read us stories, where I'd sat 8 months ago when she'd told us about the cancer diagnosis, and we'd all promised to support each other through it. "What?" Jordan was reading over my shoulder now, and I could feel his breathing, fast and shallow. I was scrolling through more emails, my hands moving automatically while my brain tried to process what I was seeing. April 3, $8,000 to Vanessa L. Morrison. April 18, $12,000 to Vanessa L. Morrison. May 2, $10,000 to Vanessa L. Morrison. $45,000 total, transferred systematically from the fraudulent account to my sister's personal bank account over the course of 2 months. Vanessa, my little sister. The paralegal who'd sent $2,000 in April with an apology about her ex-missing child support payments. The one with financial power of attorney over Mom's accounts. The one who'd had access to all of Mom's personal information, her social security number, her account numbers, her email passwords. The one who'd responded to Jordan's text about sending substantial money with, "That's amazing, Jordan, thank you so much," and then set up a fraudulent bank account to intercept it. I felt sick. Jordan was making a sound next to me, something between a laugh and a sob, and he was pacing now, his hands in his hair. She stole it. Vanessa stole it. While Mom was in chemo, while we were all scrambling to pay bills, she stole $45,000. The evidence was overwhelming, documented in black and white in emails Mom had never checked, statements Mom had never seen, transactions Mom had never authorized. Vanessa had used her power of attorney to access Mom's personal information. She'd opened a business savings account with an account number designed to catch wire transfers meant for Mom's checking account. She'd monitored the family communications, knew exactly when Jordan was sending money, deleted his confirmation email from the family account so no one would know to look for it. She'd transferred $750 to Mom's actual account. The amount she'd calculated would look like a reasonable contribution from Jordan without raising suspicion. Then, she'd systematically moved the rest into her own account, taking it in chunks small enough to avoid automatic fraud detection but large enough to drain the account quickly. It was sophisticated. It was planned. It was monstrous. "We're going to the police," Jordan said, and his voice had gone cold, flat, the kind of emotionless that meant he was barely holding it together. "Right now, we're taking all of this, and we're filing a police report, and we're prosecuting her for every single dollar." I was nodding, already gathering documents, printing email confirmations, downloading bank statements, creating a timeline. But part of me was still stuck on the impossible reality of it. My sister had stolen money meant to keep our mother alive. My sister had watched me work myself to exhaustion, had watched my kids stop asking for things, had watched Mom worry about bills while fighting for her life, and she'd had $45,000 the entire time. The police station was a 15-minute drive from Mom's house, a brick building with an American flag and a parking lot that was too small for the number of cruisers and civilian vehicles trying to fit in it. Jordan and I walked in carrying a folder of documents that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and I had the strange, dissociative feeling of being in a TV show, like this couldn't possibly be my real life. The desk sergeant was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that had seen everything twice. "Help you, gentlemen?" she asked, and her voice was professional but not unkind. "I need to report a bank fraud case," I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Approximately $45,000 stolen through wire transfer interception and identity theft." Something shifted in her expression, and she was already reaching for a form. "Have a seat. I'm going to have a detective come talk to you." We sat in hard plastic chairs in a waiting area that smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner, and I watched Jordan stare at his phone, scrolling through the family group chat, reading 8 months of messages with new eyes. After 20 minutes, a door opened, and a man in his early 50s stepped out, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt with a detective's badge clipped to his belt. "I'm Detective Lawrence Quinn, Financial Crimes Division," he said, extending a hand. 17 years working fraud cases. Sergeant Novak said you have evidence of wire transfer theft? We followed him into an interview room, and for the next 90 minutes, we laid out everything. Jordan showed him the wire transfer receipt, the confirmation email, the bank statements for the fraudulent account. I showed him Mom's legitimate account statements, the timeline of bill payments, the family email account with the mysteriously missing confirmation. I showed him the email trail in Mom's personal account, the transfers to Vanessa's bank account, the systematic draining of the intercepted funds. Detective Quinn took notes with a mechanical precision that was somehow comforting, asking questions that showed he understood exactly what we were describing. "Who has power of attorney over your mother's accounts?" he asked, and I felt my stomach clench. "My sister Vanessa," I said. "She's a paralegal in Denver. She helped Mom set up her estate planning 5 years ago." Detective Quinn looked up from his notes, and his expression was carefully neutral in that way cops have when they're thinking something significant but don't want to show it yet. "And your sister had access to your mother's personal information? Social security number, bank account numbers, email passwords?" I nodded. "She handled Mom's estate documents. She would have had access to everything." He was making notes, and I could see him writing Vanessa's name, drawing a circle around it. "Has your mother authorized these transfers? Does she know about this account?" Jordan and I looked at each other. "Mom hasn't checked her email regularly since the chemo started," I said. "The brain fog got bad after the second round. I've been managing her correspondence, her bills, her appointments, but I was only looking at her checking account, the one I'm joint on. I didn't know about the business savings account." Detective Quinn nodded slowly. "So there's a possibility your mother opened this account herself and doesn't remember? Or someone else opened it using her information without her knowledge or consent?" "Mom didn't open this account," Jordan said, and his voice was hard. "She doesn't even know what a wire transfer is. She still writes checks for her utilities. Someone used her information to intercept money I sent for her medical care, and then they stole it." "I believe you," Detective Quinn said, and there was something in his voice that made me think he'd seen this before. Families turning on each other over money, loved ones exploiting the sick and vulnerable. "But we need to do this by the book. I need to interview your mother, get her statement that she didn't authorize this account or these transfers. I need to pull records from First National, see who actually opened the account, whose IP address, whose signature. I need to contact Chase and verify the original wire details. And I need to interview your sister." The way he said that last part made it clear he expected Vanessa to lawyer up immediately, and I realized with a sinking feeling that she would, because she was a paralegal, because she knew exactly how these things worked, because she'd probably planned for this possibility, even while hoping it would never come. "How long will this take?" I asked. "To investigate, a few weeks," Detective Quinn said. "To prosecute, if the evidence holds, months to years. Financial fraud cases are complex, and defense attorneys will fight every inch. But from what you've shown me here, this is solid. We have documentary evidence, clear paper trail, motive, opportunity, and means. If your mother confirms she didn't authorize these accounts or transfers, we'll be filing charges." He paused, and his expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry you're going through this. Family cases are always the hardest." We left the police station with a case number and Detective Quinn's business card and the surreal knowledge that our sister was going to be investigated for felony fraud and embezzlement. Jordan drove us back to Mom's house in silence, and we sat in his rental car in the driveway for a long time without speaking. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the lawn Mom had always kept so carefully maintained, the flower beds she'd planted every spring, the mailbox that still had the wooden letters spelling Thornton that Dad had mounted 30 years ago before he died. "We have to tell Mom," I said finally, "before the detective contacts her. She needs to hear it from us." Jordan nodded, but neither of us moved. "How do you tell your mother, who's fighting stage 3 cancer, that one of her children stole money that could have prevented months of financial stress and fear? How do you explain that the daughter she trusted with power of attorney, the daughter who'd helped her plan her estate and organize her affairs, had betrayed her in the most calculated and cruel way possible?" "She's going to blame herself," I said. "She's going to think she should have been more careful, should have monitored things better, should have known." "This isn't her fault," Jordan said, and his voice was fierce. "She was sick. She was fighting for her life. She trusted her kids to help her, and one of us stabbed her in the back. That's not on Mom. That's on Vanessa." We saw Mom's car pull into the driveway 15 minutes later, the old sedan she'd been driving for 12 years, because teachers' pensions don't leave much room for luxury. She got out slowly, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had been through a war, and when she saw both of us sitting in Jordan's car, her face lit up with a smile that made my heart break. "Jordan, I didn't know you were in town." She was walking over, and Jordan and I were getting out of the car, and I could see the exact moment she registered that something was wrong from the expressions on our faces. "What happened?" Mom asked, and her hand went to her chest, that automatic gesture of a parent preparing for bad news about her children. "Is everyone okay?" "Everyone's fine, Mom," I said, which was a lie, but also the truth depending on how you defined fine. But we need to talk to you about something. Inside. We settled in the living room, Mom on her favorite armchair, the one that had molded to her shape over decades, Jordan and I on the couch across from her. I had the folder of documents in my lap, and I didn't know how to start this conversation, didn't know how to break my mother's heart while she was already dealing with so much. So I just started with facts. Mom, Jordan sent you $45,000 in March to help with your medical bills. Did you ever receive it? I watched her face, watched the confusion cross her features, the way her eyes moved like she was trying to remember something that was just out of reach. Jordan sent $750, she said slowly. In March. I remember because I called to thank him, and we talked about his work project. I sent $45,000, Jordan said gently. Wire transfer on March 15th. I sent confirmation to the family email, but that email was deleted. The money was intercepted by someone who set up a fake bank account in your name. Mom's face went very still, very pale, and I saw her hands grip the armrests of her chair. That's not possible. I didn't open any new accounts. We know, I said. Someone else did. Someone with access to your personal information. Someone with power of attorney. I watched realization move across Mom's face like a shadow, and she closed her eyes. Vanessa, she whispered, and it wasn't a question. I showed her the documents, one by one. The fraudulent account welcome email, the transfer confirmations, the bank statements, the systematic transfers to Vanessa's personal account. $45,000 stolen over 2 months, while Mom had been worried about how to pay her next round of treatment, while she'd been apologizing to me for being a burden, while she'd been thanking her kids for their small contributions and trying not to ask for more. Mom cried. Not the loud, dramatic crying of TV shows, but the quiet, devastating kind where someone is trying very hard to hold themselves together and failing. She kept saying, I'm sorry, over and over, apologizing to Jordan for not protecting his money, apologizing to me for not seeing what was happening, apologizing for trusting the wrong person. This isn't your fault, Jordan kept saying, and he was crying too now, and I was the only one not crying because someone had to stay functional, someone had to be the strong one, and it had been me for 8 months, so why stop now? We filed a police report, I said, keeping my voice steady. Detective Lawrence Quinn from the Financial Crimes Division. He's going to contact you for a formal statement, probably tomorrow. You need to tell him you didn't authorize that account or those transfers. Mom nodded, wiping her eyes with tissues I'd grabbed from the bathroom. How much did she take? She asked. All of it, Jordan said. 45,000. Every penny. The rest of that day felt like swimming through fog. Jordan called his wife in Seattle and told her he'd be staying in town for a while longer, his voice hollow and distant like he was reading from a script. I called Rachel and asked her to tell the kids I'd be late, that I was dealing with some family stuff, and she heard something in my voice that made her not ask questions. Mom sat in her armchair and stared at the wall, occasionally saying things like, I should have paid more attention, or I should have known, no matter how many times we told her this wasn't her fault. Detective Quinn called at 6:30 p.m. and scheduled a time to come to the house the next morning to take Mom's formal statement. Kyle called at 7:15 from Boston, his usual weekly check-in, and I had to decide in real time whether to tell him what was happening. I told him. I heard him stop breathing on the other end of the line, heard him say, "What?" in a voice that sounded like someone had punched him in the stomach, heard him say he'd get on the next flight home. I didn't tell him not to come. We needed to be together for this, whatever this was going to become. Jordan ordered pizza for dinner because none of us could think about cooking, and we ate it mechanically in Mom's kitchen, tasting nothing, while the elephant in the room grew larger with every passing minute. What do we do about Vanessa? Do we warn her that the police are investigating? Do we confront her directly? Do we wait for the law to take its course? We don't talk to her, Jordan said finally, answering the question we'd all been thinking. We let the detective handle it. If we confront her now, she'll start hiding assets, deleting records, building her defense. We let this play out legally. It felt wrong and right at the same time, the idea of not confronting my sister directly, of letting the police show up at her door in Denver without warning. But Jordan was right. Vanessa was a paralegal. She knew how the system worked. Giving her advance notice would just give her time to prepare, to minimize, to construct a narrative where she was the victim somehow. She's going to call, Mom said quietly. When the police contact her, she's going to call me and say it's a misunderstanding. She's going to have an explanation. Probably, I agreed. What will you say? Mom was quiet for a long time. Then, I'll tell her I love her, but I believe the evidence. I'll tell her she needs to make this right. And I'll tell her I can't help her with this, that she has to face the consequences of what she's done. It was the most heartbroken I'd ever heard my mother sound, and I realized that Vanessa hadn't just stolen money. She'd shattered something fundamental in our family, broken a trust that could never be fully repaired. Even if she paid back every penny, even if she went to prison and served her time and apologized until her voice gave out, there would always be this knowledge. She'd been capable of watching Mom suffer and doing nothing. She'd been capable of stealing from her own sick mother. That knowledge changed everything. Detective Quinn came to the house at 9 a.m. the next morning with a younger officer I didn't catch the name of and a recording device. Mom sat in her living room and gave her statement with a quiet dignity that made me proud and devastated at the same time. No, she had not opened a business savings account with First National Bank. No, she had not authorized any transfers from that account to Vanessa's personal account. No, she had not given Vanessa permission to use her personal information to open accounts in her name. Yes, Vanessa had power of attorney, but that was for medical and financial decisions regarding Mom's existing accounts, not for opening new ones without her knowledge. Yes, Mom wished to pursue criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. Detective Quinn explained that he'd be contacting First National for account opening records, checking IP addresses for where the account was accessed, pulling security camera footage if the account was opened in person. He'd be issuing a subpoena for Vanessa's bank records to track the stolen funds. He'd be working with the district attorney's office to determine exact charges. This could take a while, he warned Mom. Financial fraud investigations are complex. And I need to be honest with you, family cases are emotionally difficult for everyone involved. Are you sure you want to proceed? Mom looked at him with eyes that had suddenly gone steel hard, and I saw a glimpse of the woman who'd raised 4 kids as a single parent after Dad died, who'd taught 3rd grade for 33 years and never took crap from anyone, who'd fought stage 3 cancer with a stubbornness that had impressed her oncologists. My daughter stole money that was meant to keep me alive, Mom said quietly. She watched her brothers and brother sacrifice to help me while she had $45,000 she'd stolen. Yes, I want to proceed. I want her held accountable. I want her to face consequences. And I want to make it clear to my other children that this behavior is not acceptable in this family, no matter who you are. Detective Quinn nodded, and I saw respect in his eyes. I'll be in touch, he said, and then he and his officer were gone, leaving us alone with the weight of what was coming. Kyle arrived from Boston that afternoon, having caught a red-eye and driven straight from the airport, his eyes bloodshot and his normally neat hair sticking up in all directions. He hugged Mom for a long time, then Jordan, then me, and we all sat around Mom's dining room table like we were having a terrible parody of a family meeting. Has anyone talked to Vanessa? Kyle asked, and we all shook our heads. Her phone is off, Jordan said. I tried calling 3 times. Goes straight to voicemail. It was possible she didn't know anything yet, that she was just busy with work, or her kids, or life. But it was also possible she'd already been contacted by the police, had already lawyered up, had already shut down communication. We didn't know, and the not knowing was its own special kind of torture. The call came at 4:37 p.m. Mom's phone rang, and we all looked at the screen. Vanessa. Mobile. Mom looked at us, and we all nodded, and she answered on speakerphone. Hi, Vanessa, Mom said, and her voice was steady. Mom, what the hell is going on? Vanessa's voice was sharp, aggressive, the tone of someone who'd been caught and was going on the offensive. I just got a call from some detective saying I'm under investigation for bank fraud. He's asking about some account I've never heard of and transfers I don't know anything about. Did you give the police my information? Mom's face went very calm, and I recognized the expression from childhood, from the times she'd dealt with difficult parents or administrators who tried to intimidate her. I gave the police the truth, Vanessa. I told them I never opened a business savings account at First National Bank. I told them I never authorized $45,000 to be transferred to your personal account. I told them I want to press charges for fraud and embezzlement. The silence on the other end of the line was profound, and I could hear Vanessa breathing, fast and shallow. You actually think I stole from you? Her voice had shifted now, gone from aggressive to hurt to wounded. Mom, I would never. This is obviously a mistake, some kind of identity theft, someone using my information. Detective Quinn has the email trail, I cut in, unable to stay silent anymore. He has the bank statements showing systematic transfers from the fraudulent account to your personal account. He has the IP addresses. He has Mom's email password history showing access from Denver when she was in chemotherapy. He has everything, Vanessa. Another long silence. Then Vanessa's voice came back, and it was different now, cold and calculated. I need to talk to my lawyer before I say anything else. But you should all know that I had permission. Mom was worried about the money being in her account where the hospital could go after it, and I was helping her protect her assets. Everything I did was authorized, and I have documentation. It was a lie, and we all knew it was a lie, but it was also a coherent defense strategy that I could see a lawyer actually arguing. The problem with that defense was that Mom was sitting right here, very much alive and very much able to testify that she'd given no such authorization, but I could see how Vanessa was going to play this. Confused, elderly cancer patient, doesn't remember conversations. Power of attorney gave me authority to make these decisions. I was trying to help. Then you'll be able to prove that in court, Mom said, and her voice was still steady, still calm. And you'll be able to explain why you deleted Jordan's confirmation email from the family account, and why you let me worry about money for 8 months while you had $45,000, and why you transferred it all to your personal account instead of using it for my medical bills. I'm not discussing this without my attorney present, Vanessa said. And you're all going to regret this when the truth comes out. I was trying to help. I was protecting the family. And this is how you thank me? By sicking the police on me? She hung up. Mom set her phone down on the table very carefully, and we all stared at it like it was a bomb that had just been defused. "She's not sorry," Kyle said, and his voice was shaking. "She's not even pretending to be sorry. She's acting like we're the ones doing something wrong." "She's lawyered up," Jordan said, his tech guy analytical voice back. "She's going to fight this, claim it was authorized, try to make Mom look confused or incompetent. We need to be prepared for this to get ugly." It got ugly. Over the next 3 weeks, we watched as Vanessa systematically tried to construct a defense that portrayed herself as the responsible daughter protecting Mom's assets from medical debt collection, as the financial expert who'd been trying to shield money from the hospital's predatory billing practices, as the misunderstood paralegal who'd made what she thought were authorized decisions with power of attorney authority. She hired an attorney, a criminal defense lawyer out of Denver named Marcus Keller, who specialized in white-collar crime and had a reputation for aggressive tactics. Keller sent a letter to Detective Quinn claiming that all of Vanessa's actions had been authorized by Mom, that there was no fraud, that this was a family misunderstanding being criminalized by vengeful siblings. He sent a letter to our attorney, because we'd hired one too, a fierce woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in elder abuse cases, claiming that Mom's testimony was unreliable due to chemo brain, and that any statements she made needed to be viewed through that lens. He filed a motion to suppress evidence, claiming the police investigation had been initiated by biased family members with ulterior motives. Detective Quinn pushed forward methodically, building his case piece by piece. He got records from First National showing that the fraudulent business savings account had been opened online using Mom's personal information from an IP address that traced back to Vanessa's home in Denver. He got security footage from a First National branch in Denver showing Vanessa making a deposit to that account in person. He got email records showing Vanessa had accessed Mom's personal email account multiple times in the weeks before and after Jordan's wire transfer from her home computer. He got testimony from a former colleague of Vanessa's who'd overheard her talking about managing Mom's money in a way that had made them uncomfortable, but they hadn't reported. The district attorney's office got involved, assigned an assistant DA named David Liu, who'd prosecuted dozens of financial fraud cases and didn't seem impressed by Keller's aggressive tactics. A DA Liu filed formal charges: 1 count of identity theft, 1 count of wire fraud, 3 counts of theft by deception, 1 count of computer fraud, and 1 count of exploitation of an at-risk adult. Each count carried potential prison time. Vanessa's bail hearing was set for a date in late October. The family fractured along fault lines I didn't know existed. Vanessa's ex-husband, despite their bitter divorce, came to her defense, claiming that we were ganging up on her because we'd always favored the boys in the family. Vanessa's 2 kids, teenagers who barely understood what was happening, were caught in the middle. Extended family members who hadn't been involved in Mom's care started calling to express opinions, some supporting Vanessa's claim that she'd been trying to help, others outraged by the theft, most just confused and wanting the drama to stop. Jordan's wife, Stephanie, flew in from Seattle to provide moral support and ended up getting into a screaming match with one of Mom's cousins who suggested we should just handle this privately without involving the police. Kyle took a leave from his medical school rotations to stay with Mom, both for emotional support and because we were all terrified of leaving her alone during this. My wife, Rachel, became the family's unofficial therapist, talking people down from panic attacks and mediating arguments and reminding everyone that the real victim here was Mom. And Mom herself retreated into a kind of quiet devastation that was worse than any anger or crying. She'd finished her chemotherapy in August, and her latest scans showed the cancer was in remission, which should have been cause for celebration. Instead, we were dealing with a criminal case that was ripping the family apart. She stopped going to her book club. She stopped answering phone calls from friends. She sat in her chair and stared at photo albums from when we were kids, from before Dad died, from when the family had been whole and uncomplicated. "I keep thinking about what I did wrong," she told me one night when it was just the 2 of us in her living room, Kyle and Jordan having both stepped out to make phone calls. How I raised her to think this was acceptable. How I failed to teach her right from wrong. "You didn't fail, Mom," I said, and I meant it. "You taught us all the same lessons. You raised us all the same way. Vanessa made choices, bad choices, illegal choices, but those are her choices, not your responsibility." "But she's my daughter," Mom said, and her voice cracked. "I carried her, I raised her, I love her, and I also want her in prison for what she did. How do you reconcile those things?" I didn't have an answer for that because I was struggling with the same question. Vanessa was my sister. We'd shared a childhood, shared memories, shared the trauma of losing Dad, shared the experience of growing up in a single-parent household where money was always tight. And I also wanted her held accountable for stealing money meant to keep our mother alive. Both things were true. Both things were impossible to reconcile. The preliminary hearing was in November, and we all sat in a courtroom that was too cold and too impersonal, while lawyers argued about evidence and admissibility and probable cause. Vanessa sat at the defense table in a professional outfit that looked expensive, her hair styled carefully, her makeup perfect, playing the role of the competent professional who couldn't possibly have committed fraud. She didn't look at us, not once. The judge, an older man with reading glasses and a patient expression that suggested he'd seen every variation of human behavior in his courtroom, listened to both sides and ruled that there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. He set a trial date for February and denied Keller's motion to dismiss. As we filed out of the courtroom, I saw Vanessa talking to her lawyer in urgent whispers, and I saw her glance our way once with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger? Fear? Regret? I didn't know, and I realized I'd maybe never known my sister as well as I thought I had. December brought a development that changed everything. A DA Liu called Detective Quinn, who called a family meeting at Mom's house. We gathered in the living room, Mom, Jordan, Kyle, Rachel, and me, and I put Liu on speakerphone. "We got Vanessa's bank records going back 3 years, Liu said, his voice careful, measured. "The stolen funds from your mother aren't the only irregularities we found. There are multiple deposits over the past 2 years that don't match her paralegal salary or any legitimate income sources. We're talking about more than $90,000 in unexplained deposits." The room went very quiet. "Are you saying she's done this before?" Jordan asked. "We're investigating that possibility," Liu said. "We've identified several other deposits that coincide with estate and financial management work she was doing for other clients through her firm. We're reaching out to those clients now to see if there are additional victims. But there's something else. One of the unexplained deposits is from an estate account she was managing for an elderly client who died last year. The estate executor is now claiming there's a significant shortfall in the final accounting. She's been stealing from elderly clients, Mom said, and it wasn't a question. Possibly, Liu said. We're still investigating, but the pattern is concerning. If we can establish a pattern of similar conduct, it strengthens the case against her significantly. It shows intent, sophistication, a history of exploiting vulnerable people. The defense can't claim this was a one-time misunderstanding if she's been doing it repeatedly. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about our family anymore. This wasn't just about Mom's medical bills. Vanessa had potentially been systematically stealing from elderly clients, using her position as a paralegal and her access to their financial information to commit fraud on multiple victims over years. What happens now? Kyle asked. We continue building the case, Liu said. We're coordinating with the firm where Vanessa worked to pull records on all the estates and clients she handled. We're interviewing potential victims. We're analyzing financial patterns. And we're preparing for trial in February. But there's a strong possibility that once Vanessa's attorney sees the scope of evidence we're building, he'll advise her to take a plea deal. What kind of plea deal? Mom asked, and her voice was very small. That depends on what charges we can prove and how much total theft we can document, Liu said. Right now, we're looking at 10 to 15 years if we go to trial and win on all counts. A plea might knock that down to 8 to 10 with possibility of parole, depending on restitution and cooperation. 10 to 15 years. I watched Mom's face crumble as she processed what that meant. Her daughter, in prison, potentially for more than a decade, missing her kid's entire adolescence, having a felony record that would destroy any future career, becoming a cautionary tale instead of the competent professional she'd presented herself as. I need to be clear about something, Liu continued. Once we start prosecuting the additional victims, this becomes a multi-count case with much higher stakes. The media will probably pick it up. It's going to be public, it's going to be ugly, and your family is going to be in the center of it. I need to know that you're all prepared for that. We looked at each other, and I saw the same exhausted determination on everyone's faces. We'd come this far. We'd watched our sister lie and manipulate and try to paint herself as the victim. We'd seen the evidence of her calculated fraud. We're prepared, I said, and everyone nodded. The media attention started in January when a local news station ran a story. Paralegal accused of stealing from elderly cancer patient, her own mother. The story went viral locally, then regionally, then nationally, as more details emerged about the potential additional victims. Reddit threads appeared dissecting the case. YouTube channels covered it. True crime podcasts requested interviews. We declined all of them, following our attorney Patricia Chen's advice to stay silent until after the trial. But Vanessa's attorney Marcus Keller had no such reservations. He went on local television claiming Vanessa was being railroaded by a family that had always resented her success, by prosecutors looking for a high-profile conviction, by a system that didn't understand the complexities of elder financial management. He claimed the power of attorney gave Vanessa broad authority to make financial decisions. He claimed Mom's testimony was compromised by chemotherapy-related cognitive issues. He claimed the additional victims were part of a witch hunt, that every estate she'd managed had been properly accounted for, and any discrepancies were clerical errors or misunderstandings. The counter-narrative was swift and brutal. Ada Liu held a press conference announcing that they'd identified 4 additional victims, all elderly clients Vanessa had managed estates or finances for, totaling an additional $67,000 in theft. Detective Quinn appeared beside him with boxes of evidence, making it clear this wasn't a family squabble, but a systematic pattern of elder financial abuse. Patricia Chen released a statement from Mom expressing her heartbreak and her determination to see justice served. The trial began on a Monday in February that was unseasonably cold, with snow falling in lazy flurries that made everything look deceptively peaceful. The courthouse was packed with reporters, true crime enthusiasts, and members of the other victims' families. We sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, Mom, Jordan, Kyle, and me, and watched as jury selection began. It took 3 days to seat a jury, 12 people who swore they could be impartial despite the media coverage, who could look at the evidence objectively, who could separate their feelings about family betrayal from the legal facts of the case. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. A DA Liu started with Jordan's wire transfer, walking the jury through every step. The legitimate transfer from Chase Bank, the fraudulent account opened 3 days earlier with a number designed to intercept funds, the systematic draining of the account into Vanessa's personal account, the deletion of the confirmation email from the family account. He brought in a digital forensics expert named Dr. Allison Park, 15 years of experience analyzing computer crimes, who testified about the IP addresses showing the fraudulent account was accessed repeatedly from Vanessa's home computer. He brought in a bank employee from First National who identified Vanessa from security footage making an in-person deposit to the fraudulent account. He brought in Mom, who testified with quiet dignity about her cancer diagnosis, her trust in her daughter, her shock at discovering the theft. Defense attorney Keller cross-examined aggressively, suggesting Mom was confused about dates and communications, suggesting the power of attorney gave Vanessa authority to make these decisions, suggesting Jordan's wire transfer had been properly received and used for medical expenses that Mom didn't remember. But Mom held firm, her teacher's voice clear and steady. I did not authorize that account. I did not authorize those transfers. My daughter stole from me while I was fighting for my life. Liu then brought in the additional victims, one by one. An 82-year-old widower whose estate Vanessa had managed after his wife died, who discovered $23,000 missing from the final accounting. A 76-year-old woman with dementia whose daughter had noticed unexplained transfers from her mother's trust account that Vanessa had been managing. An elderly couple who'd hired Vanessa to help organize their estate planning and found $12,000 missing from their savings account. Each victim testified about trusting Vanessa, about her professional demeanor and credentials, about the betrayal of discovering she'd stolen from them. Keller's defense was that these were all misunderstandings, clerical errors, legitimate expenses that had been mischaracterized. He brought in character witnesses who testified that Vanessa was a dedicated professional, a good mother, a respected member of her community. He brought in a financial expert who testified that power of attorney gave broad authority to make financial decisions in the principal's best interest. He brought in Vanessa herself, who testified that she'd been trying to protect Mom's assets from medical debt collectors, that she'd been acting on verbal authorization that Mom didn't remember, that she'd planned to use the money for Mom's care, but the family had jumped to conclusions before she could explain. Her testimony was polished, practiced, hitting all the notes her lawyer had obviously coached her on. But under Liu's cross-examination, it fell apart. Ms. Morrison, if you were protecting your mother's assets from debt collectors, why did you transfer the money to your personal account instead of a trust or other protected vehicle? I was planning to set up a trust, but I hadn't gotten to it yet. For 2 months? You're a paralegal who specializes in estate planning, but it took you 2 months to set up a simple trust? I was busy with my own family, my own work. Too busy to protect $45,000 that wasn't yours, but not too busy to spend it? Let's look at your bank statements from March through May of last year. Can you explain these purchases? A $7,000 vacation to Mexico in April? A $4,000 payment to a credit card company for purchases including designer handbags and jewelry? A $3,000 deposit into your daughter's college fund? I watched Vanessa's face change as Liu walked through every purchase she'd made with the stolen money, and I saw the jury's faces change with it. This wasn't someone protecting assets. This was someone who'd stolen money and spent it on luxuries while her mother struggled to pay cancer treatment bills. The prosecution rested after 2 weeks of testimony. The defense rested after 3 days. Closing arguments were a study in contrasts. Liu methodical and evidence-focused, Keller emotional and speculative. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict came back on a Thursday afternoon. Guilty on all counts: identity theft, wire fraud, theft by deception, computer fraud, exploitation of an at-risk adult, multiple counts for the additional victims. Guilty, guilty, guilty. I watched Vanessa's face as the verdicts were read, and I saw something break in her expression, saw the reality finally penetrate the defensive shield she'd been hiding behind. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder, and she was crying now, quiet tears that I couldn't feel sorry for, because all I could think about was Mom sitting next to me, squeezing my hand so tight it hurt. The sentencing hearing was set for 6 weeks later. The judge ordered a pre-sentencing investigation, a psychological evaluation, a victim impact statement process. We went home that night to Mom's house and sat in her living room not knowing how to feel. Relieved, vindicated, devastated. All of it somehow, all at once, mixing together into something that felt like grief and justice and exhaustion all braided together. It's over, Kyle said, but we all knew it wasn't really over. The sentencing still had to happen. Vanessa would appeal, probably multiple times. The victims needed restitution that might never fully come. The family fracture might never fully heal. But this part was over. The truth was out. The evidence had been heard. The verdict had been rendered. How do you feel, Mom? I asked, and she was quiet for a long time. I feel like I lost a daughter, she said finally. But I also feel like I'm proud of the three of you for standing up for what was right, even when it was hard. I feel like justice was served, and that matters. And I feel like maybe, someday, I'll be able to forgive her. But not today. Not yet. That seemed like the most honest thing any of us had said in months. The sentencing hearing in April was emotional and brutal. The judge allowed victim impact statements, and we each spoke. Jordan talked about the trust he'd placed in his family, about the betrayal of having his generous gifts stolen and watching his family suffer as a result. Kyle talked about the stress and fear of seeing Mom worry about money while fighting cancer, about the anger of learning it had all been unnecessary. I talked about the 8 months I'd spent managing bills and cutting corners and working myself to exhaustion, about watching my kids sacrifice, about the fundamental wrongness of stealing from someone who's fighting for their life. Mom spoke last, and her statement was simple and devastating. My daughter betrayed me in the worst way possible. She watched me suffer and did nothing. She had the means to help and chose herself instead. I love her, and I also want her held accountable. I hope prison gives her time to reflect on who she wants to be. Vanessa's attorney presented a long list of mitigating factors: difficult childhood, financial stress, no prior criminal record, mental health issues, family circumstances. He asked for the minimum sentence with work release and community service. A DA Liu asked for the maximum, 15 years for the systematic exploitation of multiple vulnerable victims, including her own mother. The judge listened to everything, reviewed the pre-sentencing report, and then delivered his ruling. Ms. Morrison, you were in a position of trust. You had specialized knowledge of financial systems and legal processes. You used that knowledge not to help vulnerable people but to exploit them. You stole from your own mother while she was fighting cancer. You stole from elderly clients who trusted you with their life savings. You showed no remorse until you were caught, and even then, you attempted to blame the victims and portray yourself as misunderstood. This court finds your conduct to be particularly egregious and deserving of significant punishment. I hereby sentence you to 12 years in the state correctional facility with possibility of parole after 8 years. You are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, totaling $112,000, plus court costs and fees. You are permanently barred from working in any capacity involving financial management or access to vulnerable persons. This sentence is to begin immediately. 12 years. I watched Vanessa being handcuffed by court officers, watched her being led away, and felt nothing except a vast exhaustion. It was done. The trial was over. The sentence was delivered. Justice had been served in the most technical, legal sense. Whether it felt like justice, whether it healed anything, whether it made any of this worth it, those were different questions entirely. We walked out of the courthouse into April sunshine that felt wrong, like the weather should reflect the gravity of what had just happened. Reporters shouted questions that we ignored. We got into our cars and drove back to Mom's house and sat in her living room in silence for a long time. What happens now? Kyle asked finally. Now we heal, Mom said, though her voice suggested she wasn't sure that was actually possible. We try to move forward. We rebuild. We remember that 3 of my children did the right thing even when it was hard. We remember that family means holding each other accountable, not protecting each other from consequences. 18 months later, I was helping Mom plant flowers in her front garden bed, the same one she'd maintained for 30 years, working in comfortable silence on a September afternoon that reminded me of the day Jordan had dropped that box in the driveway and everything had fallen apart. Mom's cancer was still in remission. Her hair had grown back, shorter and grayer but still unmistakably hers. She'd returned to substitute teaching at Riverside Elementary, finding purpose in helping kids again. She'd started seeing a therapist, working through the betrayal and the guilt and the complicated grief of having a daughter in prison. Jordan had helped her refinance her house to handle the remaining medical debt. Kyle had finished medical school and matched to a residency in oncology, partly inspired by Mom's experience. My wife Rachel and I had slowly rebuilt our savings, and our kids had learned lessons about family and integrity that I hoped they'd carry forever. We didn't talk about Vanessa much, though we all thought about her more than we admitted. She'd sent letters from prison, first angry and accusatory, then apologetic, then reflective. Mom read them but didn't respond often. Kyle had visited her once. It hadn't gone well. Jordan refused contact entirely. I was somewhere in between, caught between anger and sadness, and the memory of growing up with a sister who I'd thought I knew. The restitution payments came slowly, $100 per month from Vanessa's prison work program, a pittance that would take decades to repay what she'd stolen. The other victims were pursuing civil suits, hoping to recover something from the wreckage. Vanessa's ex-husband had gotten full custody of their kids, who we saw occasionally, trying to maintain some connection despite everything. Are you happy? I asked Mom as we worked soil around a bed of petunias she'd chosen, because they reminded her of the ones Dad used to plant. She was quiet for a long time, her hands in the dirt, her face peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in years. Happy isn't quite the right word, she said finally. But I'm at peace. I know the truth came out. I know justice was served. I know I have 3 children who love me enough to fight for what's right even when it hurt. I know I survived cancer and betrayal and came out the other side. That's more than enough. I nodded, understanding what she meant. We'd all come out the other side changed, carrying scars that would never fully fade, but also carrying the knowledge that we'd faced something terrible and survived it together. The family wasn't whole anymore. It never would be. But what remained was stronger for having been tested. That had to be enough. Behind us, Jordan's rental car pulled into the driveway, and he got out carrying a familiar-looking box. "Found these in my attic," he called. "Thought we could go through them together." The same box of photos he'd dropped 18 months ago, forgotten in the chaos and recently rediscovered. We went inside, made coffee, and spent the afternoon looking at pictures of us as kids, of Dad, of family gatherings and holidays, and moments when everything had been simple. We told stories, laughed at memories, mourned what we'd lost, and celebrated what remained. It wasn't the ending I would have chosen, but it was the ending we'd earned. Honest, painful, real, and somehow, despite everything, still threaded with love. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.